I'm Kelly Greenwood. I'm a landscape designer. I live in La Honda, California.
Hi, my name is Lance Cornell. I'm an architect. I'm from Brentwood, California.
I chose to be a landscape designer because it was a wonderful way of combining my love of science with my love of art.
I always wanted to be an architect, ever since I had my first set of Legos. It's really inspired me to be creative, to use my math and science to really design something I really wanted to see.
Landscape design is an art that's about creating spaces for people to live in, for people to do what's meaningful to them.
Architecture to me is a way to really express yourself and to really create something that's from your heart, to take everything around you and to really meld it into something that makes a difference.
My style is really based on California natives and well-adapted Mediterranean plants. This is a garden I designed in Palo Alto, California. This garden is very small. The planting areas around the edge, many of them are only 18 inches deep. So a lot of it's about being vertical. Vertical like this with leaves, and vertical with lots of other things. Many of my gardens are about the leaves. This is a great example. This is elephant's ear, taro, which is from Southeast Asia. I don't know if we'll see any of this on our trip, but this was planted about 8 years ago, and I've always had a fascination with many Southeast Asian plants. In this case, I paired it with something very California, roses. There's also lots of tropical things like hibiscus in this garden because it's all about the pool. This garden is basically as big as the pool and a little bit more. So it's a great party pad, a great social space for the family, and it really behaves like an additional room in their house.
My architecture style is more modern, more clean line, a lot of use of materials, and a real good sense of detailing. I designed this arch back in 2010 to really bring all the visual elements of Brentwood down into one landmark. The Mount Diablo hillside that you can see there is depicted across the arch, and the rolling hills towards Livermore to the south of us are depicted in the columns. The landmark was really designed as a way to create a gateway to the downtown area and to also let you know that this is where you're at when you come to downtown.
I'm kind of like a big kid. I'm always seeing new things that interest me, and landscape design is a way that I get to play with all of those things and put them together and make people happy.
The thing I like most about my job is the fact that I'd never do anything the same from day to day. It's always a challenge, it's always creative, it's always changing. I designed this fountain back in 2010. It's off the main street in Brentwood. I designed it to create a tactile fountain where kids can touch and play with it and sort of spray water around. Also to create a landmark downtown where people can say, hey, I'm going to meet you at the fountain.
I have never been to China before.
I've never been to China before.
The only thing I know about the Suzhou Gardens at this point is what I've read online about it being the sort of Venice of China, that it's a very ancient city with a lot of canals and water.
When I think of the Suzhou Gardens, it really excites me because it's something that I've never seen before, and I'm really excited to experience it. We're going to be traveling to Suzhou for 10 days, visiting some really interesting ancient Chinese gardens. It's always been a dream of mine to visit Asia, and China in particular, so I'm super excited to go.
I'm so excited to go. Suzhou is over 2,500 years old. It's an ancient, ancient city.
And in terms of its size, it's about 6 times the size of LA, which makes it massive and old.
Suzhou seems to be just formed by the water everywhere around. There are canals, rivers, boats. It's a water city. Suzhou has been a very prosperous city for 1,000 years. Think about that. What city in the States is even 200 years old? And this place, 1,000 years of prosperity. So there's some incredible trades, incredible craftsmanship that goes on here.
But what's really interesting about Suzhou is its gardens.
At one time, there were as many as 270 of these gardens.
Today is our first day in Suzhou. We're here at the Couples Retreat Garden here. The garden itself is a 3-dimensional poem.
The first experience of the garden is to enter through this formal reception room where most people would have come in, which is full of carvings and calligraphy and hand-painted lanterns.
And at the centerpiece of this room is a larger stone that's set in a very special place of honor.
And then you come back out again into a smaller courtyard that had 3 beautiful Hu stones in them.
And they're punctuated with these holes and smooth and airy. They're positioned upright so that you can see through them.
After you move through that courtyard, you come around to the right and it opens out into a very large open area. And this mountain of Huang-style rock is in the center. There's all these pathways, nooks and crannies. I'm sure you can see that. I feel like I'm perched in an awesome playhouse. There's these incredible little paths everywhere, and you just can't help but explore and feel a little bit like a kid climbing up and down.
And they're sculpted in such a way and mortared in such a way that you can create all these separate pathways around it. And the pavilion next to these rockeries have an excellent view onto them. The pavilions are kind of like the bookmark for the book, and they stop you in your tracks and allow you to reference the garden from a different perspective. And as you walk into each one of these pavilions, you can stop and see a tree or the edge of a rockery, and you don't quite get a sense of what's happening until you pause, until you really become present in the space, and you really feel what it means to be in a contemplative space.
The main pavilion has a long view of the pool. This one behind me here. There's calligraphy on both sides that have poems that tell you about what you're going to see. The garden artists felt that the poetry helped to name and frame the space so that you understood kind of what to reflect on when you're there viewing the scene. This one that I'm looking at across the pond is my favorite. This is the moon viewing pavilion. When I first got to this pavilion, I'm thinking, how do you even see the moon through this pavilion? I'm looking up, there's an evergreen loquat tree, beautifully pruned. It's this elegant umbrella shape over the pavilion. I'm thinking, how do I look up through this tree to see the moon? I'm not going to see the moon here. But you look down into the pool and you see this incredible reflection, the color and the light. It's like beautiful old glass that when you see this whole perfect matching world down below. I can just imagine artists looking down and seeing the moon in this pond and being inspired to create more poetry and paintings.
So the left-hand side gardens have this rockery and pavilion area where the pavilion is centered on the rockery in such a way that there's always a little movement in your pathway. Nothing is truly axial or symmetrical in this garden.
There are some really interesting examples of Hu stones as well, the tall Swiss cheese-like stones. So we had a lot of fun exploring the progression of the courtyards over there and the really tight choreography of what you see and how the view is controlled so that you see this perfect composition when you walk through.
We were working through this great interplay between shadow and light and solid and void, and moving through spaces and walking through these circuitous little pathways that reveal themselves to painting-like portraits of gardens and trees and ponds. It was really a magical space.
So as I'm walking around this garden, I can't help but notice all the little patterns on the ground. The fine pebble mosaics all over the ground space. There's pathways of pebble mosaics. It opens out into patios. It blends the spaces in this incredible rhythm. Triangles, flowers, all kinds of different shapes. So I'm having so much fun seeing all the different plants that are around here. There's some amazing old friends that I know well from California. We use a lot of bamboos. There's some wonderful short bamboos all the way around. This wisteria is absolutely incredible. This wisteria has to be 100 years old. When that thing blooms, those little purple grape-like clusters of blossoms would just be hanging right over the water. It would just blow my mind to see this in spring.
One of the things I really enjoy about this garden, and I think I'm going to see this throughout my trip, is that these pathways are always turning. And if you have a garden that's straight and linear, you would just walk right through it. But gardens like this, there's twists and there's turns, which causes you to slow down and pause, almost like a visual speed bump, where you are forced to confront what's in front of you and then change your view depending on where the path leads you. It's a genius move to do it as a garden design, to put in those turns.
When we finally worked our way through most of the garden and the buildings,
there's a boat dock where there's gondolas waiting for you.
We step into this little old wooden boat that's creaking.
This beautiful lady, 66-year-old lady, comes in and just as bright as you can be, starts singing. And we didn't quite know what the song was, and through our translator, it was a folk song for the city of Suzhou, and about the different flowers and the different months of the year and what it all meant. And it really punctuated the whole experience with a beautiful song and wonderful rhythm of her singing. It took us an entire day to explore this space and understand all the riches it has to offer and unveil all these different secrets. And to finish it with a song was truly magical.
I have to say that I'm never going to design the same way again. Just today, these gardens feel so lush. It feels so big on the inside, but they're small and they're surrounded by walls. They're entirely designed to look in. For those of us who live in townhouses and tight, small gardens, really thinking about how to create a garden that is interesting, help you think about the things in your life that are meaningful and to find peace and joy in your space, in your home.
What really inspired me today was how meticulously designed a space can be. The people who designed it, the people who worked on it are all gone. But the only thing that's lasting is the work. And if anything, that is the greatest influence that I take from this visit. So here we are at day 2. We're at the Lions Grove Garden here in Suzhou.
This garden is on a much grander scale. It's about 2.5 acres. This garden is famous here. It was added to the list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites in 2000, along with 8 other gardens in Suzhou.
The garden starts off with a series of halls and courtyards.
The first hall, the ancestral hall, was the main arrival point where all guests would have been received, and it feels very grand. The height is impressive, the size, the scale of everything is so big. Between the ancestral hall and the Hall of Joyous Feasts, the little hallway opens out into a larger courtyard. The courtyard has a pebble mosaic on the ground. It has a wonderful Chinese symbol and lucky signs around it.
The surrounding bats represent luck. In the Chinese language, the word bat is very similar to the word luck. These two here represent health and longevity.
And as you stand in front of the hall and look back toward the ancestral hall, and there's this incredible rockery.
It's a rock formation with a tree and some rock sculptures standing up with a patinaed white background. And as you're walking through that and you orient yourself in a certain way, you really get a framed view of what would be living ancient Chinese art.
And then you turn around and the Hall of Joyous Feasts, which was where all the parties were held.
Which has two different sides to it. There's a male side and a female side. The female side is quite whimsical.